Welcome to First. I'm Nichelle Poston along with Mark Eichman and Shirley Min. Keeping people from returning to prison once they get out is the goal of a program many hope is the way of the future.
The future of the University of Delaware will fall to a new president in a few months. The current president looks back at her time in Newark and the challenges for the future.
And the future of animal control in Delaware rests with a group from the Brandywine Valley. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
An editorial in the News Journal last month points to a study which shows Delaware is one of 11 states that spends more on prisons than it does on education. A call for prison reform has been coming from many corners of the state. Keeping young men from returning to prison is a big part of that effort. That's why a program run by the Hope Commission is gaining a lot of attention as a model for an effort that could go statewide and maybe even nationally. It's our first look this week.
I'd rather crawl to my future than to run back to my past.
49-year-old Tyrone Williams admits it's not easy, but with the help of Wilmington's Hope Commission, it's certainly possible.
I remember when I first started coming here, it was kind of hard because I was really closed off, not really open, not really receptive to people. So that was like a problem in the beginning.
However, leaders here and partnerships at other local programs helped to change Tyrone's attitude.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I wasn't going to do. You know what I mean? I knew certain situations that I wasn't going to allow myself to ever be back in that situation again, no matter what. You know what I mean? So that was the foundation for me. 3
years behind bars was also enough to motivate Tyrone.
It's just a horrible experience, you know? You got to dig deep in yourself. I just remember that I spent most of the time reflecting on my situation, you know, my life, what it took for me to get there, you know what I mean? How unhappy I was to be there, how disappointed I was in myself, how I expected more out of myself, and just what was I going to do differently, you know what I mean, now that I had all this time to reflect.
Tyrone even decided to spend extra time in a halfway house just to stay out of trouble until he found employment. He attributes part of his success to a past mentor.
He said the most important thing today is your attitude. He said, and if you change your attitude, everything else will fall behind that. You know what I mean? And he had this formula up on his wall that broke it down for you. And then that's when it began to click. You know, and then I start smiling more.
Nowadays, Tyrone is working at a Delaware recycling plant, taking care of his family, furthering his education, and encouraging recently released prisoners to change their lives.
Y'all go to jail and y'all play chess every day on the boards. Some of y'all become expert chess players on the board. But when you come out into the world, you don't know how to play chess. You don't know how to make moves to set up from one situation to the next situation.
Devin Hargraves is one of the many men benefiting from advice similar to Tyrone's. The 25-year-old is a proud father of a 5-year-old daughter that he walks to school daily. He is determined to not go back to jail. Instead, he's focusing on making a difference in his daughter's life as being a role model. Going in out of the cold.
It feels excellent. I get a chance to be with her at the time she needed me the most. I mean, school is important, so I definitely feel good about that.
Hargraves says transitioning back into society would be tough without the Hope Commission that gives him a sense of family.
I'm focused and I see a lot of things clearly, and now I understand life more.
According to Executive Director Charles Madden, the Hope Commission has helped 120 men since October 2015. That's a significant number that could lead to more services for offenders outside of the Wilmington area.
So lots of conversations about trying to increase the amount of people we serve here. But also when we started out, we were hoping to try and create a model that could be expanded across the state. So at some point, we'd like to see ourselves expanded into some of the other counties because there's a need for this, across the state, and so we'd like to try to meet that need.
Meanwhile, Tyrone's message remains dedicated to sharing words of wisdom, this time from his grandmother.
I remember what my grandmother told me when I was a kid, and she always told me this, and I always heard her, you know, but some things you have to find out for yourself. She said, nothing's good going to come out of anything bad.
Thanks to support from the Hope Commission, Hargraves, the young man you saw walking his daughter to school, was recently offered a job. He's now working for the city of Wilmington. As for the Hope Commission, the goal is to open up more centers statewide, but no timetable has been established to do that yet.
Dr. Nancy Target is headed to the University of New Hampshire this summer after 1 year as interim president and more than 30 years working at UD. Delaware education reporter Avi Wolfman-Arendt sat down with Dr. Target for an interview about her time at the university. Avi.
Mark, one of the first questions I asked Dr. Target was to tell me the one thing that either has or hasn't happened at UD over the last 3 decades that's most disappointed her.
Well, I think that what we could do better at has to do around diversity and inclusion. And you see, we had an issue last fall that shed some light on some of the shortcomings that we have. And what really made me proud of this institution was the way the community recognized it, came together, sort of galvanized the community to come together as a group, and then continue that dialogue, and then ultimately get to a place where we've got some objectives, some goals, some principles, guiding principles, and some outcomes where we know whether or not we'll be successful. So they took a situation that was difficult and turned it around into something that I think will really be a foundation for the institution going forward.
Why has the percentage of African American students here at the university remained so stubbornly low?
Yeah, so it has been an issue at this institution, and really when you look nationally, it's an issue at a lot of our institutions nationally. So I go back to the 18th century when this institution was founded. It was all white, all male. And even the Women's College came around in 1914. We didn't really embrace coeducation until 1945. And so now it's sort of this evolution. That's a pretty slow evolution when you think of things, and that's just a gender sort of evolution. And now, as we continue to evolve around all aspects of diversity, so it's race, it's gender, it's people with disabilities, it's people who are veterans, people who have different perspectives. The whole concept of diversity and inclusion and what we want to see at this institution, and how we want the fabric of the institution to reflect that rich texture, because it's good for all of our students and it's good for all of us. And so I think that it's part of the natural evolution. I look back to 1984, we were 94% white. And I look at today and we're coming up on, we're about 24%, almost 25% diverse in terms of race and ethnicity. So that's improvement, right? Would I like to see it happening faster? Yes, I would, but we are making strides in that regard.
Speaking of, you talked about gender as well. You're a woman president here at the University of Delaware. How important has that been to you to be a trailblazer in that arena? Yeah. And how important is it to you moving forward that the UD appoint a president who's either a woman, a person of color, or both?
Right. So I think that there are a couple of things. One is that it's been a tremendous honor to serve in this role. I'm a first-gen student. Who would have ever thought that I would have had the opportunity to do this? This is why I always tell students, you never ever let anybody define you. You always believe in yourself. And so it's been an amazing opportunity to do this. Where I have seen the importance of it, and this goes back to students want to see people who are like them in roles of faculty and staff and administration. They want to see that they can achieve these things. And so I see it in the sense of it is important to have role models that are out there so students know that they can achieve things. I remember a little 8-year-old girl came up to me the other day and she said to me, she was an African-American girl, and she came up to me and she said, "You're the president of the University of Delaware?" And I said, "I am, and someday you can be too." And she just looked at me. I mean, it just opens up a horizon for children, for adults, for our students to think about that. So in that regard, I think it's important to think about that and to have diverse pools of applicants for positions that we have here. That said, we always want to hire the person who's the best qualified for the job.
I want to do a little bit of rapid fire with you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
These are fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Which would you rather have as a pet? A blue hen or a wildcat? You keep you keep the wildcat outside in a pen if you want. It doesn't have to be in the house.
You know, so one of the things I'm going to say is that there is a time and place for both of those kinds of pets.
Okay, good answer, good answer. My favorite social media platform is
Twitter. That one's an easy one.
The single best food item one can eat at the University of Delaware is...
Boy, you know, I think it's not the single best food item, it's the single best dining hall, which is the new Rodney Dining Complex, because it's got amazing, you can eat vegan, kosher, gluten-free, Mongolian, down-home Main Street kind of food. It's just wonderful. So it's the choices that you have there, I think. Healthy, you can eat healthy as well.
The most important word in higher education today is?
Flexibility.
And my proudest moment at as University of Delaware president was?
I think it will be commencement, to be able to see the success of all the students, to be able to share that with their parents and families and friends. I'm really looking forward to that moment.
Finally, I wanted to ask, what are you going to miss most about a university you've been a part of for over 30 years?
Yeah. It's the people. It's the people you get to work with, and so really you miss the people. The good news is that in this day and age of social media and how connected we all are, you never really say goodbye, right? You get to be able to stay connected to a lot of them. But it's the wisdom, it's the passion of our students, it's the commitment of our faculty and staff to trying to inspire and transform our students, and that I'll miss that.
I also asked Dr. Target to set a reasonable 10-year goal for the University of Delaware, and she said it would focus on making the UD community reflect the broader community in terms of diversity and inclusiveness. Dr. Target's successor, Dennis Asanis, is set to take the reins in Newark on July 1st.
Coming up on First, after years of pointing fingers, the state is trying to bring order to dog control in the first state. And combining ceramics and print makes for a good first experience. Delaware's Office of Animal Welfare kicked off 2016 with new statewide animal control duties, partnering with a new shelter to house the animals. The changes also mark a new beginning for the first state animal center and SPCA in Kent County, which had provided animal control in the state for about a decade.
Athena is lucky to be alive. She's still pretty skinny and scraped up, but the pup's on the mend.
It was this tree.
Thanks to Good Samaritan Liz Baldwin.
I didn't know she was frozen. It was so cold.
Liz Baldwin was running in Rockford Park on a cold January day when she found Athena left by this tree.
I wasn't even sure if it was alive. Literally left on the side of the park road. It was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking.
After doing some digging, Baldwin's friend called the state's Office of Animal Welfare to help.
If someone calls us with a concern about animal cruelty or animal control, we send an officer out to enforce the law, to educate the public, or provide resources. We also pick up animals sometimes that are stray or lost, or we rescue animals that have been neglected or abused.
Little history here. State lawmakers established the Office of Animal Welfare in 2013 to consolidate pet programs and services under a statewide umbrella. Now the state manages things like a low-cost spay and neuter program, education, and most recently, animal control. Hetty Brown's in charge and says she has about $4 million taxpayer dollars to work with.
I do think that just by consolidating services and taking advantage of economy to scale, we can look for cost savings. We can also look to bring in new revenue, like through dog licensing.
Westchester-based Brandywine Valley SPCA, formerly Chester County SPCA, is the state's new shelter partner. So state animal control officers will bring the animals to Brandywine Valley's new Delaware shelter in Newcastle, where they'll get lots of TLC.
We are taking in animals from the Office of Animal Welfare, the animals that have no homes and owners. And if the owner is not reclaiming the animal, we would attempt to place it out for adoption.
Brandywine Valley outbid Delaware SPCA, winning the 3-year, $6 million contract.
There was about a $3 million difference between the 3-year contract bid between the Delaware SPCA and the Brandywine Valley SPCA. So cost did play into the decision.
I think it's kind of sad that our Office of Animal Welfare did not lobby the shelters in Delaware to each take a piece of the pie. Now we have a fifth nonprofit coming into our state asking for funds to help the animals.
Kevin Usselton is the executive director of First State Animal Center and SPCA in Kent County. For a long time, his shelter handled animal control and sheltering statewide. And for a long time, he pushed for a state takeover.
Each contract was set up with the county, so they were individually set up. If it went to the state, it would be one contract, which would be easier to maintain.
Yet Usselton didn't even bid on the state's sheltering contract when the time came.
We were somewhat surprised that they didn't bid, but of course it's an open bid process and each organization has to decide if providing those services are right for that organization.
It's no secret that Usselton's relationship with Brown and her supporters is tumultuous. Usselton believes his organization is always made out to be the bad guy because it's the only non-no-kill shelter in the state.
They were demoralizing our organization to members of the community and to elected officials. And so we just decided that it's best to leave them alone.
And so after 10 years, First State is getting out of the dog napping business and into doggy daycare and boarding for cats and dogs.
We're still offering sheltering to unwanted animals, but those unwanted animals come to us by owners instead of picking them up as strays on the street.
Meanwhile, Usselton says he helped Brandywine Valley get its bearings here in Delaware, where Athena is recuperating. And in spite of their differences, all parties agree the welfare of Delaware's animals is what matters most.
If you have concerns about strays or dangerous dogs, animal cruelty concerns, or think you may have been exposed to rabies, call the Office of Animal Welfare's 24-hour hotline at 302-255-4646. Now, the office also launched a statewide lost and found pet registry online, complete with pictures at animalservices.delaware.gov.
Artist Mitch Lyons studied ceramics and printmaking in college. After graduation, he found a way to combine the two. He became the first person to print with clay. Now, over 50 years later, he's still working in his craft. Mitch and his clay monoprints make up this week's First Experience.
My name is Mitch Lyons, and I went to an undergraduate school in Philadelphia as a printmaker. I went to Tyler for my graduate work in ceramics, and in 1968 is where I began thinking about marrying the two, printmaking with clay. Monoprint is you get one print, mono meaning one. Clay monoprint has a component of the clay in it, and no one's ever printed with clay before. This is a technique I invented, and I'm really happy to share it. Basically what I do is I take white clay, like porcelain, stick it in a blender, and then I add colors. And I paint these colored slips, which is liquid clay, on the slab, one layer over another, one color over another. After the design is finished, I take a canvas and wet it, place it over the slab, roll it with my rolling pin, and that pulls a thin layer of clay off. To me, it's a very unsophisticated technique that gives you very, very sophisticated results. For me, making the pottery and making the clay prints are the same. They're the same techniques, it's the same material, Of course, the clay pots are fired and the clay prints are not, but they're basically the same process. My work doesn't look like clay. It does to me. I'm very fond of the clay because it has a surface that is unlike ink or paint or acrylic, whatever. So it has a very soft, intimate quality. I like the freedom. You know, I come out here with a cup of coffee in the morning. I may just sit down for a couple minutes, look outside, you know, just watch the birds. I think it's the freedom, and the freedom leads to the passion. I have an affinity toward the clay, and it's the love of the material that I seem to gravitate toward. I make a living as an artist. I mean, just saying that alone is remarkable. I am so blessed by having that freedom that I could play and be a child and make work that seems to be very well accepted. It's a very childlike technique and I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun with it. I always thought that if you're going to do something for the rest of your life, you better have fun with it.
The clay slab Mitch uses was created in 1980 and it's been kept wet all this time. He teaches classes and workshops in his studio and he's traveled the world teaching his technique. He's also written a book. Check out MitchLyons.com to learn more.
And next week on First, we're going to play a little pickleball. The game is growing in popularity and we're heading to the courts to play around.
And that is First for this week. We thank you for watching what the Delaware Press Association calls the best newscast in the state. For Avi Wolfman-Arent, Shirley Min, and Mark Eichman, I'm Michelle Poston. Have a great week.